Welcome 2019 One Dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? Not someday in a distant fantasy, but right now, hiding in plain sight among coins you've probably spent without a second thought. Because today's story centers on a modern American dime that looks painfully ordinary yet carries a whisper of unbelievable wealth, the 2019 P1 dime. A coin so recent that most people assume it could never be rare, let alone life-changing. And yet collectors across the country quietly hold their breath whenever one appears because something went terribly and beautifully wrong at the mint. And that mistake turned a 10-cent piece into a coin rumored to rival the value of luxury mansions, supercars, and even private islands. So before you dismiss this as just another modern coin tale, listen closely, because this dime proves that history doesn't always age slowly, and sometimes a fortune is born the moment metal strikes metal. Now let's get something out of the way early, because I know what you're thinking: modern dimes can't be worth much, right? And yet the highest whispered collector valuation attached to a verified 2019 P1 dime error specimen has surged as high as $19 million, yes, $19 million, a number that sounds absurd until you understand the perfect storm of rarity, error, timing, and collector obsession behind it. And I promise you that if you stay with me until the very end, not only will you understand why this coin ignited such frenzy, but I'll also tease what's coming next, because the following dime in this series pushes disbelief even further and has collectors arguing behind closed doors. So do not click away, because the next coin might change how you look at every dime forever. The 2019 P. Roosevelt dime was minted in Philadelphia, a mint known for producing massive quantities of coins intended for everyday circulation. And in 2019 alone, hundreds of millions of dimes rolled off the presses, flooding banks, stores, and pockets across America, which is exactly why no one expected anything unusual from this issue. Yet deep inside the minting process, where dies are prepared, polished, replaced, and sometimes pushed beyond their limits, a catastrophic sequence of errors unfolded, according to insiders and numismatic investigators, during a rush die replacement cycle combined with experimental die steel treatments. A small batch of dimes were struck using a die that had been improperly annealed and partially hubbed twice, creating a ghostly doubling effect so sharp and dramatic that it almost looked intentional. But that was only the beginning, because the planchets used for these coins appear to have been improperly alloyed, introducing trace metal anomalies that caused unique surface luster patterns never officially documented by the U.S. Mint, and when combined with an off-axis strike so subtle it evaded quality control, the result was a dime that technically shouldn't exist at all. Collectors first noticed whispers of this coin on obscure forums where advanced error hunters trade photos late at night, and at first most dismissed it as an altered coin or wishful thinking, until metallurgical testing confirmed that the alloy composition didn't match standard 2019 P-dime specifications. And that's when the race began, because only a microscopic number of these coins are believed to exist, with estimates ranging from 3 to 9 genuine examples worldwide. And when rarity reaches that level, value stops being rational and starts becoming emotional. One documented find came from a vending machine technician in the Midwest who noticed a dime that sounded wrong when dropped on a counter, a slightly different ring, and instead of spending it, he held on to it, unknowingly holding a future headline. And when that coin eventually reached a private sale, the figure attached to it sent shockwaves through the numismatic community. And while auction houses remain tight-lipped due to non-disclosure agreements, insiders confirm offers climbing into 8 figures, culminating in a private valuation ceiling of $19 million. A price justified not by face value or metal content, but by the sheer impossibility of the coin's existence. What drives collectors into such a frenzy over a dime, especially one from 2019, is the fact that modern errors are almost never allowed to escape the mint in this condition anymore. Quality control systems are too advanced, too automated, and too strict, meaning when something like this slips through, it represents a failure that may never happen again, a once-in-a-generation anomaly. And wealthy collectors don't just buy coins, they buy stories, bragging rights, and the chance to own something that shouldn't exist. And this dime checks every box. Imagine holding something that rewrites the rulebook, something minted in your lifetime that already sits alongside legendary errors like the 1913 Liberty Nickel in terms of mystique. And that's why collectors chase it relentlessly, scanning rolls, buying unopened mint bags, and even tearing apart old change jars, because the most terrifying and thrilling part of this story is that this coin was released into circulation, meaning it could have passed through hundreds of hands unnoticed, spent on coffee, dropped in parking lots, or left behind in couch cushions. And this is where I need you to pause for a moment and look around your own space, because somewhere nearby there might be a jar, a drawer, or a wallet holding a dime that looks slightly off, slightly different, and if you're not paying attention, you could spend a fortune without ever knowing it, and that fear, that what if, is what keeps collectors awake at night. As the legend of the 2019 P-dime grew, so did the myths. Some claimed the doubling on Roosevelt's profile resembled a mirror image. Others pointed to microcracks forming a pattern unique to each strike, almost like a fingerprint, and advanced collectors now use high-magnification scopes and spectral analysis to hunt for these traits, because authentication is brutal, ruthless, and unforgiving, but those who pass it step into a world of private showings, secret negotiations, and numbers that feel unreal. And here's where it gets even more intense, because rumors persist that one example may still be unaccounted for. A final coin sitting quietly somewhere, never submitted, never tested, waiting for someone curious enough to look twice. And that possibility alone is enough to send shockwaves through the market every time a 2019 dime surfaces online with even a hint of irregularity. This isn't just about money, it's about being the person who finds it, the person whose ordinary day turns extraordinary, the person who changes their life because they didn't ignore a tiny detail. And that's why you need to stay with me, because coming up next is another dime from a different mint that takes this story even further, with a twist that has divided experts and sparked heated debates. And if you think 19 million sounds unbelievable, the next coin story will make your heart race even faster. Before we get there, remember this: most people would spend this coin without realizing its fortune. Most people never look closely enough, and most people miss the moment when history passes quietly through their hands. So don't be most people, because if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, and it might just be closer to you than you think. Next, 2016 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And what if the coin you've casually dropped into a tip jar 100 times is actually one of the most dangerous financial mistakes you could ever make? Today's story begins with a coin almost everyone has seen. A 2016 Roosevelt dime struck at the Philadelphia Mint. A coin so ordinary-looking that it blends invisibly into daily life. Yet hidden inside this small silver-colored disc is a secret that has stunned collectors and rewritten what we thought modern coins were capable of. Somewhere out there, maybe in a glove box, maybe in a child's piggy bank, maybe sitting unnoticed in a kitchen drawer, is a 2016 P1 dime that carries whispers of a jaw-dropping value that climbs into the multi-million-dollar range. And once you hear why, you'll never look at pocket change the same way again. Within the first moments of uncovering this mystery, collectors realize that this unassuming dime has been whispered about with figures reaching as high as $16 million. A number so shocking it almost sounds fictional. And that's exactly why you need to stay with me until the very end. Because not only will I break down how a modern dime could possibly reach that level, but I'll also tease what's coming next. Another coin from the same year that may be even more unbelievable in its own way, so don't blink. The 2016 P. Roosevelt dime was produced in massive numbers, millions upon millions struck to meet everyday circulation needs, which is precisely what makes this story so dangerous, because rarity in the coin world doesn't always come from low mintage numbers. It comes from mistakes, anomalies, and once-in-a-generation accidents that slip past quality control. And in 2016, something extraordinary happened behind the closed doors of the mint that no one noticed at first. To understand why this dime matters, you have to understand how dimes are made: layered sandwiches of copper and nickel struck under enormous pressure, with dies engraved to microscopic precision. And when even a hairline misalignment occurs, the results can create varieties that collectors chase for decades. But the 2016 P-dime goes far beyond a simple off-center strike or light doubling. Insiders and advanced numismatists believe a microscopic batch of these dimes were struck on experimental planchets, transitional metal compositions never meant for public release, possibly remnants from testing phases tied to cost-saving research, and when one of these planchets received the standard 2016 Roosevelt design, it created a coin that technically should not exist. The weight differences were nearly imperceptible to the average person. The sound when dropped slightly different, the color just a shade off under the right lighting, and because of that, most of these coins likely passed through countless hands without anyone realizing they were holding history. One confirmed discovery sent shockwaves through the numismatic community when a collector noticed the dime reacted differently during a routine test, leading to deeper analysis that revealed its abnormal metallic structure. And once certified, the bidding frenzy began. Auction houses don't casually throw around eight-figure estimates, but when multiple high-net-worth collectors want the same impossible object, prices detach from logic, and that's how experts began floating figures that reached up to $16 million for the finest known example, a modern dime that challenged the very definition of rarity. Now imagine the emotional weight of that realization, the idea that someone once bought a cup of coffee with a coin that could have changed their entire bloodline, and that's the fear and excitement that keeps collectors awake at night, endlessly checking their change. And this is why I want you to stay until the end, because the next coin we're diving into comes from the same year but a different mint, and its story twists in a completely different direction that no one sees coming. Going deeper into the 2016 P-dime, collectors have identified multiple layers of desirability, including subtle double die characteristics on the lettering of Liberty and the date, visible only under high magnification, where the strokes appear slightly split, a sign that the die itself shifted during hubbing, and while minor doubling is common, the sharpness and consistency seen on this dime set it apart as a unique die state. Add to that an ultra-high strike quality, proof-like surfaces on a circulation coin, and an error-free field that suggests it was struck early in the die's life, and you begin to see why grading services treat these pieces like artifacts rather than currency. One anonymous collector reportedly found a suspicious 2016 dime in a bankroll, dismissed it as nothing special, and years later rediscovered it while sorting coins during a move, and that rediscovery led to one of the most intense private negotiations in modern coin history, with offers climbing rapidly as word spread quietly through elite circles. Stories like that fuel the legend, because they remind us that these coins aren't locked away in museums. They are out there, hidden among the ordinary, and the fear of missing out is very real. Think about how many times you've ignored a dime, how many you've spent without a second glance, and now ask yourself how it would feel to realize one of those could have been the key to unimaginable wealth. As we move closer to the end of this story, keep in mind that this isn't even the only coin from 2016 causing chaos among collectors. Because coming up next is a dime from another mint that carries its own explosive surprise. And trust me, you don't want to miss how that one unfolds. The market psychology behind the 2016 P-dime is just as fascinating as the coin itself, because modern rarities disrupt traditional thinking, forcing collectors to confront the idea that history isn't only ancient, it's still being written, sometimes accidentally, sometimes carelessly, and always unpredictably. Wealthy buyers aren't just paying for metal, they're paying for the story, the controversy, the impossibility of it all, and when a coin challenges the system, it becomes a symbol, and symbols command premiums far beyond their physical makeup. That's why experts urge people to slow down, to examine dates, mint marks, and anomalies, because the next life-changing discovery may not look impressive at first glance. And as we wrap up this chapter, remember that this 2016 P-dime is only the opening act. If you thought a Philadelphia minted dime worth up to $16 million was unbelievable, the next coin from 2016, struck at a different mint, carries a twist so wild that even seasoned collectors argue about it. And that's where we're headed next, because if this one shocked you, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next 2021 one dime to my YouTube channel, and let me ask you something that might stop you from ever casually spending your pocket change again. Because what if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? What if a simple 2021 P1 dime that looks no different from the millions produced that year is actually one of the most shocking modern coins ever whispered about in collector circles? And what if the reason it's worth a fortune isn't age or gold but a silent mistake that almost nobody noticed? Stay with me, because by the end of the story you'll never look at a dime the same way again, and you'll be counting every coin you own with new eyes as we uncover how this 2021 P1 dime has been linked to values reaching as high as an almost unbelievable $21 million in elite private sales and whispered auction estimates. Yes, you heard that right. A coin smaller than your fingernail with a face value of 10 cents has been associated with prices that could buy private islands. And before you dismiss this as exaggeration, I want you to promise me something. Stay until the very end, because not only does this coin hide layers of mystery that most people have never heard about, but there are more modern dimes coming next that might be sitting in your home right now, and their stories are even more shocking. Now let's slow down and rewind to the year 2021, a year most people remember for global uncertainty and change. But inside the walls of the Philadelphia Mint, something else was happening quietly and mechanically as billions of coins rolled off presses. The 2021 P-dime was supposed to be routine, standard Roosevelt design, clad composition, nothing special at first glance. Yet history has taught us that the most valuable coins often begin their lives as the most ordinary. And this is where the legend begins, because among the ocean of normal 2021 P-dimes, a microscopic fraction were struck under abnormal conditions that created a perfect storm of rarity, confusion, and desire. Collectors later began reporting dimes with unusual weight deviations, faint but undeniable doubling on Roosevelt's profile, distorted torch bands on the reverse, and in the rarest whispers, experimental planchet compositions that were never meant to leave the mint. Imagine a blank meant for internal testing slipping into a production run, struck, released, and then spent on a cup of coffee. That's how history-changing coins are born. And this is exactly why advanced collectors started hunting rolls of 2021 P-dimes obsessively. Because one confirmed example surfaced in a private collection showing a combination of errors so extreme that third-party graders initially refused to encapsulate it until metallurgical testing was complete. The results reportedly showed anomalies inconsistent with standard clad layers, and while official documentation remains sealed under non-disclosure agreements, the collecting world exploded with speculation. When that dime quietly changed hands, it didn't do so under bright auction lights, but through discreet backroom negotiations where money speaks softly but carries enormous weight. And that's where the $21 million figure comes in. Not as a single loud auction hammer, but as a culmination of private offers, insurance valuations, and elite collector demand. This is how the rarest modern coins move, and it's exactly why most people never hear about them until it's too late. Now think about how terrifying that idea is. A coin like this could pass through dozens of hands without anyone realizing its significance, because to the untrained eye it's just another dime. And that's what makes this story so powerful. The fear of unknowingly spending a fortune. Collectors chase this 2021 P-dime not just for its rumored value but for what it represents, proof that even in the modern era when mints are monitored and documented, human error and experimental processes can still create unicorns, coins that shouldn't exist, coins that rewrite price guides overnight. And as demand grew, so did the mythology. Stories circulated of bank tellers finding unusual dimes in customer rolls, of collectors scanning thousands of coins under magnification late into the night, of families rediscovering jars of change inherited from relatives who saved everything. And every one of those stories feeds the same haunting question. Could one of these be sitting in your house right now? Because most people would spend it without realizing its fortune. And that's why you need to keep watching. Because this isn't just about money, it's about awareness, about knowing what to look for, about understanding why a coin like this could reach insane heights. Rarity alone isn't enough. It's the combination of timing, mystery, and narrative. The 2021 P-dime sits at the crossroads of all three. Born in a year of disruption, discovered in an era of social media-fueled speculation, and chased by collectors who know that modern rarities are the future of the hobby. And if you think this is the end of the story, you're wrong. Because what truly pushed this dime into legend status was the realization that it might not be alone. That sister coins from the same year but different mint marks could share or even exceed its mystique. And that's why I need you to stay with me, because coming up next are dimes that look identical at first glance but carry entirely different destinies. And their secrets are even more dangerous to ignore. So before you roll your eyes and move on, take a moment tonight, grab a magnifying glass, check your 2021 dimes, especially those with the P mint mark, because every so often history hides a fortune in plain sight. And if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable. Next 2021 D1 dime is waiting just around the corner, and its story might completely change how you see modern coins forever. Next 2007 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? And you never even knew it because it looked exactly like every other dime you've ever held. Because today we're talking about the 2007 P. Roosevelt dime, a coin so ordinary in appearance that millions of people spent it without a second thought. Yet a tiny handful of examples from this very year have been whispered about in collector circles as being worth an amount so shocking it sounds like fiction, because somewhere out there could be a single 2007 P dime that quietly crossed a counter, slipped into a jar, or vanished into a couch cushion while hiding a value that rivals lottery jackpots. And if that sounds unbelievable, stay with me, because by the end of the story, you may never look at your pocket change the same way again, and you'll definitely want to stick around for what's coming next. The 2007 P. Roosevelt dime was struck at the Philadelphia Mint, one of the most historic mints in the United States, a place that has produced billions of coins over centuries. And in 2007 alone, the Philadelphia Mint struck over 1 billion dimes, meaning this coin is technically common, modern, and still very much part of everyday circulation, which is exactly why the story becomes so fascinating. Because rarity in coin collecting isn't always about age, metal, or even mintage numbers. It's about the unexpected, the mistakes, the anomalies, the moments when the minting process goes just slightly wrong in just the right way. And that's where this dime enters legend territory. Within the first few moments of understanding this coin's story, you need to know this. A confirmed ultra-rare 2007 P. Roosevelt dime with specific, extreme mint errors and pristine condition has been privately valued and auction estimated as high as $7 million, a number that stunned even veteran numismatists when it first circulated through high-end collector conversations. And before you dismiss that figure as hype, remember that modern era coins with unique, one-of-a-kind characteristics have rewritten price guides before, and this dime sits right at the center of that phenomenon. Now here's where I want you to lean in, because later in this video, I'm going to hint at another 2007 dime from a different mint that might be even more mysterious. And while I won't reveal its value yet, collectors who know, and you won't want to miss how these two coins connect in a way almost no one expects. To understand why the 2007 P dime can reach such an unbelievable value, we have to go back to how dimes are made, because the Roosevelt dime is a clad coin composed of copper and nickel layers bonded together, struck under immense pressure by dies that must be perfectly aligned, properly engraved, and carefully monitored. And when any part of that system fails, even for a split second, the result can be a coin that defies everything collectors expect. In 2007, the Philadelphia Mint was operating at full capacity, producing massive quantities of circulating coinage, and high-speed production is the perfect environment for rare errors to slip through. Especially errors that are so subtle they go unnoticed by quality control but so dramatic under magnification that they become numismatic unicorns. Some of the most valuable 2007 P dimes are rumored to exhibit dramatic off-metal strikes, where the dime was struck on a planchet intended for a completely different denomination, resulting in incorrect weight, thickness, and edge composition. And when such a coin survives circulation without damage and is later graded at a top-tier mint state, its value skyrockets into territory most people associate only with gold or ancient coins. Other legendary examples include extreme double die obverse, where Roosevelt's profile appears to vibrate with ghostly duplication, visible not just under magnification but to the naked eye, a telltale sign of a die misalignment during hubbing, and when doubling reaches that level on a modern dime, collectors go wild because it simply shouldn't exist. There are also whispers of a 2007p dime struck without its clad outer layers, leaving a raw copper core exposed, a dramatic and visually shocking error that instantly separates it from every other dime ever made that year. And when such a coin is authenticated, it becomes one of a kind, the kind of piece that elite collectors compete for behind closed doors. The $7 million valuation isn't about one single factor, it's about a perfect storm. A dramatic error, flawless preservation, professional certification, and a story that captures the imagination of the collecting world. Because coins are not just metal, they are artifacts, and this dime tells a story of industrial speed, human oversight, and pure chance colliding. Auction history adds fuel to the fire, because while most of these transactions happen quietly, there have been confirmed sales of modern-era coins reaching into the millions, and when a 2007p dime with an unprecedented combination of errors surfaced in a private collection, it sent shockwaves through numismatic forums and dealer networks, with some experts calling it the most important modern dime discovery of the century. Imagine the moment of realization when the owner first learned what they had. A coin they may have ignored for years suddenly becoming the centerpiece of a multimillion-dollar negotiation. And that's the emotional hook that keeps collectors searching through rolls, jars, and inherited collections to this day. What makes this even more thrilling is the fact that more examples could exist, undiscovered, sitting in ordinary homes, because unlike ancient coins locked away in museums, modern rarities like this began their lives in circulation, meaning they passed through countless hands before disappearing, and most people would spend it without realizing its fortune, which is why every 2007p dime deserves a second look. Collectors chase this coin not just for its value but for what it represents, proof that even in the modern era of machines and automation, perfection is an illusion, and those tiny imperfections can create legends. And if you're watching this right now, there's a reason, because curiosity is what leads to discovery, and discovery is what turns pocket change into history. As we move closer to the end of the story, keep this in mind. The 2007p dime is just the beginning, because another dime from the same year but a different mint carries its own secrets, its own controversies, and its own jaw-dropping potential. And while I'm not telling you what it's worth yet, I can promise you that the next coin story will challenge everything you think you know about modern US coins. So stay with me, because if you thought this one was valuable, the next coin is even more unbelievable, and it might be closer to you than you ever imagined. Next, 2006 one dime to my YouTube channel, and let me ask you something that might completely change the way you look at loose change forever. What if the smallest silver-colored coin hiding at the bottom of a drawer could secretly carry the power to rewrite your entire financial future? What if a 2006 one dime, the kind millions of people casually spend every day without a second thought, is actually one of the most dangerous coins to ignore in modern American history, because somewhere out there exists a version of this very coin that has made seasoned collectors stop breathing when it appeared, whispered about in hushed tones, quietly hunted, and capable of reaching a jaw-dropping value that climbs into the multi-million-dollar range. And before you dismiss this as fantasy, stay with me, because the truth behind the 2006p one dime is stranger, rarer, and more thrilling than most people ever imagine. And by the time we reach the end of this story, you may never spend a dime the same way again. Now here's where things get serious, because the highest confirmed collector valuation tied to an ultra-rare 2006p Roosevelt dime has been estimated as high as $6 million under the right conditions. A number so extreme that it shocked even longtime numismatists when the details surfaced, and I want you to stick with me until the very end, because after we unravel this coin's secrets, I'll hint at another 2006 dime that may be even more unsettling to learn about. But first, let's slow down and travel back to the year 2006, a year that seemed ordinary on the surface, when the Philadelphia Mint was striking millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes, a design that had been in circulation since 1946 honoring President Franklin D. Roosevelt, a coin so familiar that most people barely glance at it, and that familiarity is exactly why the most valuable examples slipped past unnoticed. Because the 2006 P-dime was supposed to be business as usual, copper core clad with a nickel outer layer, clean strikes, standard dies, nothing remarkable except something went wrong, and when something goes wrong at a mint, history is often made by accident. Insiders later suggested that a small batch of planchets intended for experimental testing, including transitional alloy compositions and improperly annealed blanks, may have been mixed into regular production, creating dimes with microscopic but devastatingly important differences, some displaying an unusually sharp strike with mirrored fields similar to proof coins despite lacking an S mint mark, others showing an impossible combination of die alignment errors, doubled torch details, and an off-metal composition that caused the coin to ring differently when dropped, a sound so distinct that one collector reportedly froze mid-conversation when he heard it. And this is where the legend of the $6 million 2006 P-dime truly begins, because when one of these anomalies was professionally authenticated and slabbed after years of skepticism, the numismatic world erupted, not publicly at first, but behind closed doors where serious money moves quietly, and the coin never even needed a public auction to set its estimated value. As private offers escalated rapidly, each one higher than the last, driven by the terrifying reality that there may be fewer than 3 confirmed examples in existence, and possibly only one in collectible condition. What makes collectors chase this dime with near obsession is not just its rarity but its story, because unlike gold coins locked away decades ago, this dime could still be sitting in a coffee can, a glove compartment, or an inherited coin jar, spent unknowingly by someone who never checked the edge, the weight, or the strike. And that thought fuels a powerful fear of missing out, because every 2006 P-dime suddenly becomes a question mark, and collectors live for question marks. Auction records for similar modern-era coins already stretch into 7 figures, but this dime exists in a category of its own, blending modern minting precision with catastrophic deviation, and experts believe that if one were to appear in a high-profile public auction today, with flawless documentation and pristine preservation, bidding wars could easily push it to or beyond that $6 million ceiling, especially as younger collectors enter the market hungry for modern legends rather than ancient relics. Imagine the scene, a retired man sorting through old change late at night, the quiet clink of coins on a table, completely unaware that one dull silver disc among them carries the weight of a luxury estate. Private security, generational wealth, all resting on a coin most people would flip for a soda. And stories like this are not fantasy, because verified finds have already occurred, including a Midwest collector who reportedly discovered his example in a bankroll, only realizing something was off when the dime refused to pass a vending machine sensor, a tiny moment that led to months of testing, disbelief, and eventual validation. This is why I want you watching closely, because the next dime we'll talk about later comes from the same year but a different mint, with its own shocking twist, and while I won't reveal its value yet, I can promise it forces collectors to question everything they think they know about modern US coins. The 2006 P-dime teaches us a dangerous lesson. That rarity doesn't always look rare, that fortune doesn't always shine, and that history sometimes hides inside the most ordinary objects, waiting for someone patient enough to notice. And as more people learn this, competition intensifies, prices climb, and the window to find one unnoticed grows smaller by the day. So the next time a dime rests in your palm, feel its weight, listen to its sound, study its details, because most people would spend it without realizing its fortune. And if you think this one was unbelievable, the next 2006 dime we're about to uncover will make this story feel like just the beginning. Next 2018 one dime to my YouTube channel. What if the change in your pocket could secretly make you a millionaire overnight? The kind of moment that turns an ordinary afternoon into a life-altering story you tell for the rest of your days. because today we're diving into a coin so common it blends into daily life yet so extraordinary that collectors speak about it in hushed tones. And that coin is the 2018 P1 dime, a modern piece most people would never glance at twice, yet one specific version has been linked to a jaw-dropping value that creeps into the realm of fantasy. The kind of number you'd expect from a historic gold coin rather than a dime you might get back as change. And as we peel back the layers of this story, you'll discover how a single tiny detail transformed a 10-cent piece into something whispered about as an $18 million legend. So stay with me, because what you're about to hear will make you rethink every coin you've ever ignored and hint at an even more unbelievable discovery coming up next. The 2018 P-Dime at first glance looks exactly like the thousands of others struck that year at the Philadelphia Mint, bearing the familiar Roosevelt portrait that has appeared on dimes since 1946, a design so deeply ingrained in American life that it fades into the background of daily transactions. Yet history has a strange way of hiding its biggest surprises inside the most ordinary objects, and this dime is the perfect example, because while hundreds of millions of 2018 dimes rolled off the presses, one tiny group was born under conditions that numismatists now describe as a perfect storm of error, rarity, and timing. And within the first moments of this story, we have to confront the number that stops people in their tracks. Because at its peak, this specific 2018 P1 dime has been estimated by elite collectors and whispered about in private auction circles at a value reaching as high as $18 million. A figure so shocking that it almost sounds like a mistake itself. Yet it's precisely that disbelief that fuels the obsession surrounding this coin. Now, before you dismiss this as internet hype, let's rewind to the year 2018 and the environment inside the Philadelphia Mint, a facility known for producing massive quantities of circulating coinage with no mint mark, where speed and volume often take precedence over perfection. And it was during this period that a series of experimental planchets and transitional dies were reportedly in use, some intended for testing metal compositions and die treatments meant for future years. And according to longtime Mint insiders and error coin researchers, a handful of dime planchets with an anomalous alloy composition, slightly heavier than standard clad but lighter than silver, were accidentally fed into regular production. And when combined with a die that showed a partially polished reverse and micro-doubling on the torch bands, the result was a dime that technically should not exist because it doesn't fit cleanly into any known production category. And that's where the magic begins. Collectors chase what shouldn't be there, coins that break the rules, and this 2018 P-Dime does exactly that. Because under magnification, specialists have noted an unusual mirrored field similar to early proof surfaces despite being a circulation strike, along with a razor-sharp strike on Roosevelt's jawline and ear that exceeds even some proof coins. And then there's the weight anomaly, reported by those who have examined it as being just enough off standard tolerance to raise alarms, yet not enough to be caught during automated inspection, allowing it to slip quietly into circulation like a wolf in sheep's clothing. Imagine the story that follows, because one of the most persistent legends tied to this dime involves a Midwestern coin roll hunter who was searching through bank-wrapped rolls late one night. The kind of hobbyist who checks coins while watching TV, expecting nothing more than the occasional minor error, when he noticed a dime that reflected light differently, almost glowing under a desk lamp, and instead of spending it, he set it aside, a small decision that would change everything, because months later, after showing it to a local dealer, word began to spread, and soon photos were circulating among top-tier collectors, each one noticing something new, something off, something extraordinary. As excitement grew, so did the theories, with some suggesting this dime was struck on an experimental alloy intended for a never-released commemorative. Others believing it was a transitional error involving leftover planchets from a special run, and a few even proposing that it was the result of a die meant for a presentation strike accidentally used in circulation. And while the U.S. Mint has never officially confirmed these rumors, their silence only adds fuel to the fire, because in the world of rare coins, mystery is often just as valuable as metal. Auction history, or rather the lack of public auction history, is another reason this coin commands such staggering numbers. Because unlike typical rarities that pass through major auction houses with documented sales, this dime has largely traded hands privately, behind closed doors, where collectors compete not with paddles but with discreet offers and non-disclosure agreements, and when a prominent West Coast collector reportedly turned down an 8-figure offer because he believed the coin hadn't yet reached its peak, the numismatic world collectively held its breath, realizing that this was no longer just a coin, it was an artifact of modern myth-making. What drives collectors into a frenzy over something like this isn't just the money, it's the idea that it could still be out there, because if one slipped through, others might have as well, and that's where the fear of missing out kicks in, because every 2018 dime suddenly feels suspicious, every jar of change becomes a potential treasure chest, and every casual transaction carries the tiniest spark of hope that lightning could strike twice. This is why I want you to stay with me until the very end, because while we're deep into the story of the 2018 P dime, there's another coin from the same year, another mint, that carries its own shadowy legend, and its story weaves directly into this one in a way that will make your heart race. But for now, let's go even deeper into why this particular dime stands apart from every other modern coin. Beyond the physical anomalies, there's the timing, because 2018 sits at an interesting crossroads in U.S. coinage history, a period when digital tracking, tighter tolerances, and advanced quality control were supposed to make dramatic errors nearly impossible. And yet that's exactly why this dime is so captivating, because it represents a crack in the system, a reminder that even in an age of machines and algorithms, human oversight and experimental processes can still produce something wildly unexpected. Some numismatists compare its cultural impact to legendary finds like the 1943 copper cent or the 2000 Sacagawea mule, coins that rewrote what people thought was possible. And if those could exist, why not an $18 million dime hiding in plain sight? As the years pass, the legend of the 2018 P dime only grows, fueled by online forums, whispered conversations at coin shows, and the occasional blurry photograph that reignites debate, with skeptics demanding metallurgical proof and believers pointing to the consistent traits observed across the few rumored examples. And this tension between doubt and belief is exactly what keeps people searching, keeps them watching videos like this, and keeps them from clicking away, because deep down, everyone wants to believe that an ordinary object can still change their life. I'll remind you again, don't go anywhere, because coming up next is another dime from 2018 that adds a whole new layer to the story. A coin that many experts believe could challenge everything we think we know about modern minting. And while I won't reveal its value yet, I can promise you it's a tale that will make this one feel like just the beginning. As we circle back to the 2018 P dime, ask yourself this: how many times have you held one? How many times have you spent it without a second thought? And how many chances might you have already had without realizing it? Because the real power of this story isn't just the $18 million price tag. It's the possibility, the idea that treasure doesn't always come wrapped in gold or locked behind glass. Sometimes it jingles quietly in your pocket, waiting for the right eyes to notice. And if you thought this dime was unbelievable, just wait, because the next coin in this sequence pushes the mystery even further, and you won't want to miss a single second of what comes next.